Yeah. Solutions. If you want to grow the private economy, you have to prune government. Everybody knows that. That's not hard. But what does that really mean? It means a lot, because you can't undo 50 years of neglect and taking prosperity for granted overnight. It means a certain amount of pain and sacrifice, and that's what we're not comfortable with anymore. I think, not to be too preachy, but we're a little petulant in our approach to our problems. And I think I've been doing this a little bit, and I think one of the things that bothers me personally about it is that how loath politicians are to talk about things that people don't want to hear. You know, you're not supposed to talk about things that make people uncomfortable, like sacrifice, or like better ways to manage health care that somehow mean one person has less and another person has more. You know, I don't like that. I mean, we really ought to be able to not judge people by their least fault or the most ridiculous thing they ever said. We ought to be able to transcend that and have honest conversations without condemning one another for saying something that we absolutely don't like. I'm pro-choice. I'm personally against abortion, but I'm pro-choice. I'm in favor of civil unions. That runs against the grain of the couple of parties I'm part of. It surprises me because it does, and I find that I don't have a lot of judgment about those things. I think if you want to be free yourself, you have to accept the idea that other people are going to think differently, and certain freedoms accrue to them, and it's reciprocal. So, you know, I've kind of had to weave that in the process, and I do it honestly, and I get yelled at, and I've made mistakes doing this. I think that I'll continue to make mistakes, and I lost last time, and I think I was as happy as if I'd won, because I would have preferred to win. But it's important to try. It's important to, you know, by definition, if you don't try, you lose. And so I tried to do something I believed in, and I think that you talked about Mr. Arcuri. I don't honestly concern myself too much with him. I'm concerned deeply with the notion that people whose principles are mobile make them without principles by definition. That the how you vote on health care, vote for the House bill for 3 years, you talk about how wonderful
you voted
it
both
is.
ways, so that covered everything.
Well, and then the son is a less expensive, less intrusive, without the public option bill comes in the Senate. I announce and he votes against it. Scott Brown wins in Massachusetts, so he votes against it. That should be the question. I actually think Mr. Arcuri would be in much better shape personally today had he been who he said he was. I mean, cap and trade. He votes for it in committee numerous times. As soon as they have enough votes to vote against it, he does, because they can, you know, he can do it, and they can still pass it. That's unprincipled. That's a lack of character. That's enough reason right there to fire the guy. It isn't enough reason to hire me, necessarily, but you only got two choices. You can't fire him without hiring me, but you I think. Yeah, that's right. So my point is, principles matter. Knowing what someone stands for matters. Knowing that they're reliably where you left them matters. Me coming here and saying this to you and coming back in 2 years and being a different person should be a source of outrage for people. That's why the working families threw Mr. Arcuri off their line. They wouldn't endorse it because the unions they've invested $750,000, and that's a real number in his campaign. And he basically voted against every wish they have, thinking that they would essentially line up behind him anyway. Well, they didn't. And I understand that. I think that they're right not to support him. And frankly, and I know this camera's running, I'm happy to say it, the Democrats need a better candidate. They need someone who represents issues the way they see them, if there are generally, and nobody's perfectly aligned. This contest is going to get ugly because they're looking into my past. They have foiled everything I've ever built or done that's public, and there's a lot. And you know, I I read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and Scientific American, and a bunch of other things every chance I get. And I'm also a member of the Cato Institute, which I get a kick out of what they write me. I like to read and understand. And the way to learn is to be able to, Keynes said, you give me new facts, I'll give you new ideas. He didn't say, I've learned this today and I never want to learn another thing. You know, look for people who are capable of changing their mind, but demand that they explain it to you. That's the critical thing. How did you get there? Why did you get there? Your lives, the 600 and something thousand people in this district, should not be about politics. They should be about your future. And you should be able to be disappointed and happy because you understand how someone voted and why they voted, so that you have a principled person there most of the time. You look at New York State. I don't know where we're going, do you? The number one thing that's wrong in our economy is, believe it or not, it's not money. Banks are replete with money. Interest rates are essentially zero when you factor in whatever inflation there might be, and there's not much. But the problem is confidence. Business people don't invest, they don't take risk, and risk is a very important word to people, and they don't take risks, they don't grow, they don't hire, they hunker down, they protect their families. Why should we be surprised that our economy is stagnating today? It's because people, and it's not growing, it's because people don't know where our direction is. And in terms of what you said earlier about Bush tax cuts, I know that's really what we're talking about, 2002 and 3, I think, tax cuts. That if you don't have a prosperous middle class, you don't have a sustainable model either. You can't have growth at the top and growth at the bottom and shrinkage at the middle, which is what we're experiencing in this country, and have a sustainable economy. I too get upset with the ideologues in Congress on both sides. I too am upset that the Republican Party does seem somewhat content to complain, as if power were the only was really the ultimate, the end in itself. I mean, the end is solutions that are sustainable, and I would like to think that at some level every congressman has an obligation to do something on their own, not walk lockstep with the party. But that's what you see right now. You see a minority party that votes 100% one way and a majority votes the other way, and they let a few people off the hook because they have such a large majority. It's all gamesmanship. It's not leadership. So I don't know that it's fair to say anybody can make a difference. But I can tell you one thing I absolutely do know, that if people like you and me don't engage ourselves in the process, if we accept what we have, it'll only get worse. That people who are not invested in careers need to get involved. Sherry Boulder was a great example, I think, of a guy who, well, maybe he lived in more prosperous times and that kind of thing. But he was the guy who reached across aisles. He was he had his enemies, not enemies, but he has detractors in his own party. And he had a lot of friends on the other side. But, you know, he knew what he stood for. I think he worked in that direction. And he was consistent, and I think he was an honorable guy and still is. And, you know, I don't feel that way about our current congressman. I feel as though I don't know where he's going or what he stands for. And I look around and I see such a dearth of leadership at all levels. I find myself at odds with almost every politician I meet. And yet, you know, you still feel the pressure to be nice and not be too vitriolic and get along. And so, I do. I try not to make battles with people that serve no purpose. Anything else?
What's your perspective on the war on drugs? Is another, as far as
you know, it's a great topic. Any particular piece of it?
Well, I mean, in terms of either legalization of marijuana or something.
You know, that's a judgment that I think societies go through phases where they mature as a collective, and they reach a point where they say something is all right now and it wasn't once. You know,